have a degree in Canadian history. For me, everything I did in life was within the expectations of really my parents. I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to make them proud. Looked at going to law school, and then I realized I wasn't that vindictive. So I decided that wasn't for me. I knew I didn't want to be a teacher. So I kind of was like, okay, what now? The time I was meeting my husband, we were starting planning a life together. And, I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll go into sales, and went into sales and loved it. And I was very successful. I was a high performer, hitting quotas, top of the game. That was me. That was who I was. I had this drive. I had ambition. I like to be number one in anything that I did.
Okay.
And that mindset went into my marriage. That mindset went into becoming a mother. And really, to be truly honest, that mindset is what was the foundation of my burnout. The idea of being perfect, perfect birthday parties, perfect Christmases, perfect wife, perfect mom, perfect employee, never dropping the ball, never asking for help. That was who I was. That was what I lived by. And
that was a lot of weight.
That in turn was what broke the camel's back, per se. So, if I then look at when things really started for me, I can tell you now with confidence that it was when we weren't able to have a second child. When I started to go through fertility treatments and not tell anybody, how that was financially affecting our marriage, how that was emotionally affecting our marriage, how that was, I had this idea that I needed the 2.5 children and the white picket fence and the big house, right? I wasn't complete. I didn't feel fulfilled unless I had that. I was never happy with what I had. I really did not have gratitude in my life at that time. I just had this mindset of what it needed to look like. And the fertility treatments, and then going to work and coming home and being that mom and being that wife and being that friend. I was the one that always had parties. I was the one that had bottles of wine. Let's have a great time. That was me, and then in 2019, things started to slide. And this is where I can actually, from January of 2019 until November of 2019, I can actually pinpoint every single stage of burnout. And there's 12 stages to burnout, which is what a lot of people don't realize. I can pinpoint each stage in my own personal journey. From stage 1 of becoming excessively ambitious about my career. Mm-hmm. I'm really focusing in on that because I was having so much trouble with fertility. I couldn't think about that. I couldn't deal with that anymore. And we lost 11 pregnancies since having my son,
wow.
2 of which were ectopic. So, I had gone after pregnancy loss after loss after loss and never stopped, never took time to heal, just kept going. So I became obsessed with my career. I started to work more and more, and that was where the yes in me was always, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, you want to come over? Yeah, let's do that. Oh, you want to go here? Oh, I'm totally in. I always said yes to everything. I didn't want to let anybody down. And that is stage 2. You are constantly making everybody else happy.
So is that part of, before we get into the next stages?
Yeah.
Are we defining right now in our symptoms? Define for us burnout.
So for stage 1 and 2, you are obsessed with something. And mm-hmm. and listen, the World Health Organization says that this is a workplace disease, illness, correct? Right. But to me, as women, when does our work ever stop? Right? So to me, workplace is life. Okay. Like we work at home, we work in workplace. Some women work at home 24/7, and they too can suffer from burnout. So when I say work, I like to always let my audience know that, this could be working at home, or it could be working in an office. You could be the CEO of a company or the CEO of your family, right? Like, I don't, it doesn't matter, right? But you are becoming obsessed. Perhaps it's your children you're becoming obsessed about. Perhaps it's your work you're becoming obsessed about. But your focus has become very, very narrow onto one thing and one thing only. And within that world of the one thing, you are constantly saying yes. Yes, I can do that extra assignment. Yes, I can take on those extra tasks. With that comes more work, emails at night. Maybe you're up making Halloween costumes that really you should have gone to Party City and bought, but you said yes to making the handmade one, right? Like those are the yeses that you're doing. Okay. You're going above and beyond what is needed. And then with that comes taking care of yourself a little less, right? Because the yeses are taking up your time. So you're losing time for you, right? So that's where your third stage comes in, where you really start to neglect you. And this isn't just you're not going and getting your manicure as often as you should be, right? Like, you are truly neglecting who you are as a person. Some of those
could it look like maybe not showering, not washing your hair,
absolutely,
not ironing your clothes, just things that make you the you that you are.
Not showing up on time. I have always been somebody that shows up on time. And one of the first things people started to do is, Jenna, you're late. Well, Jenna's never late for something. Why is Jenna late? Well, Jenna's late because she was just writing 10 emails to all those yeses that she said, but now she has another thing that she has to get to because she has said yes to that as well.
Okay. So
right?
With it becomes a balance of time management, and you start running out of time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you start running out of energy. You start
Mm.
running, you're not sleeping as much. You got things to do.
Right.
You're not eating as much. You're skipping meals.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, when I say that you're neglecting yourself on every level. Maybe on a Sunday morning, you're not getting up and going to church because you need that time to be doing something else.
Doing something else.
Right? Like, that is the neglect, is that any time that you had ever allotted for yourself. And I mean, you look back to before we got married, or before we had kids, or before we were in a relationship, or before we even started working.
Mm-hmm.
When we were going to school, we found time for ourselves.
Right. That's right.
Where did that stop? And why did it stop?
Right. The nail appointments start drying up, the hair appointments. I get it.
The sitting in your bed for 10 minutes reading.
Mm-hmm.
It's as simple as that. Right? The getting up 5 minutes early to do stretches so that you feel good. Suddenly you don't have those 5 minutes. It's as simple as that.
What are some of the typical work environments that, I mean, we talked about, like, I guess you said it, right? Maybe I'm answering my own question. Burnout can happen in any occupation, whether it's being the spouse that's at home taking care of the home front and the children, or it can happen on the battlefronts of working in the office, corporate, at the field, the construction site, whatever it is, right?
You look at the top ones, you have healthcare for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Nurses, doctors, the pandemic that we've just gone through definitely elevated burnout in our healthcare. You look at 911, right? Again, people that there's a lot put on them, emotionally, mentally, physically. Military, I did a little bit of research before we got together, and actually the US military, they're saying about 28% of entry-level people right now feel burnt out. That's a high number, 28%. And those are your junior enlistees, like your soldiers and your Navy. Those are the juniors. They didn't do as much digging into your leadership levels, but newly enlisted military personnel in the US, 28% are feeling burnt out.
as an Army retiree, I will tell you that there was a time when it was a sergeant major. He was, a great leader. He was friendly. He was personable. And he truly, truly cared about each one of the troops under his responsibility. And I remember chatting with him one time. He stopped by my office, and at the time I was working in operations at the hospital. And I was, usually the first one there, the last one to leave. For part of that time, I had a deployed spouse, and at that time, I had two boys at home, and I, I just remember him talking to me about work-life balance,
Mhm.
and my response to him was kind of like, well, if I don't do it, we're short personnel. Who's going to do it? You know what I
Mhm.
mean? He talked to me about, leaving some things, reprioritize my list. Not everything has to be done by the morning. In the evening, if I can go through and make that update my checklist, and in the morning when I come in, relook at it. And I just couldn't get that concept.
Mhm.
And I'd been telling, my soldiers for so many years about going to college and making sure their GT scores were correct and all the things, right? All the things to advance in leadership, all the things that, I wanted to do. Well, there are a few things that I hadn't done. And so I was talking to the sergeant major about, trying to do some of those, accomplish some of those goals. And he was like, with all the work that you're doing right now, and all the responsibility that you have, do you really think that you can fit this in? I was like, of course I can. Of course I can. I'm confident in my soldiers. I'm confident in so many different things. Of course I can.
Mhm.
I'm the juggler of all jugglers. I'm the gesture of all. And he told me, he was like, I want you to be careful. He was like, because you might step out on a couple ledges to accomplish these two goals that we're talking about. And he was like, and what happens when you get to the other side? He
Mhm.
was talking to me about burnout. He was like, there are going to be some people that are going to, go to the other side of these goals, and they are going to absolutely smash and kill it. He was like, and then there are those that are going to suffer from burnout, and they're not going to be able to complete tasks. They're not going to be able to receive instruction. He described all of these things. And I said, that can't be me.
Yeah.
It can't be me. And I will tell you, it was me. I got to my
Mhm.
next station, and
Yeah.
some of the things that I had seen on my NCOERs or whatever was not that what I had seen before in the many years before that. And I had no idea. So when I started chit chatting with you and following you on your journey of burnout, I was like, wow, this is truly real. So,
100% it's
you know,
real.
I say all that to say that, people use it as a common phrase,
Mhm.
synonymous with being fatigued or just exhausted. That's not it. So
Yeah.
I'm glad we're having this conversation. When you've listed, stage 2 and 3 of burnout, what are
Mhm.
some of the other signs and symptoms through the other stages? And, what are some of the strategies that we can start using to manage those symptoms?
Absolutely. So let's look at 4 and 5. So 4, I call not my fault.
Okay.
At 4, you're neglecting yourself and you start to notice things aren't going the way you normally would expect them to. Maybe there's a little bit more conflict in your marriage. Maybe there's a little bit more pushback at work. Maybe you get in a fight with a friend. You know, things start to become overwhelming
Mhm.
quicker, right? Because you're starting to lose a sense of who you are, what your values are, right? You're losing that bit by bit. And like you just said, burnout happens to anyone and it's silent. I didn't
Mhm.
know what burnout was until I experienced this. I honestly thought I was just going absolutely crazy. I honestly thought this was it. I was done. Put me in a special ward. I've lost it.
Right.
Like I had
Right.
no idea that this is what I was suffering from. I wish someone had come to me at stage 5 or 6 even and said, "You are suffering from burnout.
Mhm.
You need to take a step back." But when I'm not willing to ask for help, I wasn't willing to speak up and use my voice to say how I was feeling, because remember, I had that perfectionist mindset that I can do it all, that
Right.
I don't need to ask for help, that I'm little Miss Perfect. You
Right.
know,
And
I
that can also show in some cultural and
Mhm.
ethnic backgrounds, right? Asking for help might maybe, you know, some learn that just go to church, go talk
Yep.
to the pastor, go pray about it.
Mhm.
Some see it as a sign of weakness or an inability to properly function. So I'm glad that you're talking about this. This is amazing.
That's why I say we lost the village, because the one thing that I opened my eyes suffering from burnout was that we don't have a village anymore. We don't support women, especially in a community setting where we
Mhm.
have each other's back. I want women in my circle that says to me, "I don't agree with you. Are
Mhm.
you okay?"
Right.
I also want women that uplift me and empower me and support me.
You know,
But I want women that are also transparent, that come to me and say, "You were a little off yesterday. Are you okay?"
you're okay. And actually
You
be
know?
prepared for the response, right?
Exactly. And that's what I was missing in my life, because I really was around a bunch of people that we all just said, "Hey, let's have a great time, and let's be moms, and let's be wives, and let's drink wine." And I have a really hard time with mom club.
Right.
This whole idea of we don't have to take care of ourselves and everything's wrong in the world and we're just going to drink wine and that's the solution. I have a really hard time with it, because I
Right.
guarantee you half of those women are pulling their hair out, they're stressed, but they're not saying anything because they're masking it with their mom club uniform of their hair up and their Lululemons and their glass of wine.
That's
Let's
right.
be real and talk about how we can support each other.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, I enjoy a glass of wine, but listen, I
Right.
don't need that to fix my problems.
Do you think that there are a portion of a good chunk of women or just people in general that get stuck in their mom clubs, their dad clubs,
Mhm,
their sports clubs, their whatever clubs,
mhm.
and they're so used to the griping and moaning and all of that, the environment
Yep,
of kind of petting each other, that they just kind of get stuck there for a while and it perpetuates a cycle for
mhm.
them, right?
The comfort zone, right? We
Right,
don't wanna leave our comfort zone, we don't wanna be different,
right.
right? Like, I talk when I speak at women's events, I always say before I bring up the mom club, I said, "I know you're not all gonna be happy with me about this,
Mhm.
but I'm gonna tell you need to cancel your mom club subscriptions. You
Right.
really." Right? And women come up to me after and they go, "I never thought of it like that."
Mhm.
Mhm. Because it's a mindset that you're being told to stay in,
Right. You're all
right?
comforting each other with the same issues, and as long as you have the same issues, then you can lean on that person,
It's
right?
okay to be stressed. It's okay not to have time for yourself. It's okay for your kids to run you mad. It's okay not to have time to take care of yourself.
Mhm.
No, that's not okay.
There's
Not
24
okay.
hours in a day, and you gotta manage that time,
Mhm.
right? You have to
Yeah,
be able to mentally put yourself together to manage that time, and it can be
absolutely.
challenging if you're stuck in the rat race,
Yeah.
the hamster wheel.
Yeah. So, I look at loss, not my fault, right? Which is your fourth stage where things aren't quite working out. You're having conflict in your life. You're feeling overwhelmed.
Okay.
Next, you find you're losing value in yourself. You're losing your self worth because you're saying yes to things that might not align with who you are. You're doing things, you're taking away time from you. And deep down, we know deep down, we have pretty good intuition and guts, us women, right? We know deep
Right.
down that something's wrong, that something doesn't feel right, but we're pushing through that. right? We're not
Mhm.
listening to that internal voice, right? We're not listening to ourselves and saying, I need to take a step back. And that is really where the turning point happens in burnout, because when you ignore, as a woman, your intuition and your gut and yourself, your own voice,
Mhm.
that's scary. That's a problem,
Think you
because
lose it a little bit, right?
you're not
You
being
won't.
authentic anymore. You're being what everybody else wants you to be.
Right. Right.
Right. And that really, for me, really hit home.
Okay.
When I was going through burnout, and I was doing things that, for example, we were going to England. I was taking my son to England for the first time, and we needed to be at the Toronto airport. I think it was some crazy hour in the morning. And I think we were leaving the house at 5 a.m. And at
Mhm.
3 a.m., I was still writing emails for work,
Mm.
to make sure I was good for the next 10 days. And I knew it was wrong. I knew
Right.
I needed to take a step back and pack and start to get ready for this trip. But instead, I was focusing on all the other things. And that moment sticks with me, because I honestly, oh, my husband and I had such an argument because of what I was doing. And, it just set the tone for the whole trip. And, even though we had a wonderful time in England, I didn't see at that time what I was doing. I thought I was
Mhm.
being a great employee. I didn't
Right.
realize that I was actually leaving myself to have absolutely no sleep for the next 24 hours of travel that I just prepared myself for, right?
In the
So,
meantime, the family is trying to figure out their place in the pecking order, right?
oh, and at that point, they were so low. At that point, they were low, and that was May 2019. So between January and May of 2019, I'd already hit 6 stages of burnout without
Wow.
even knowing it. I had no
So
idea.
so when did you notice? When did you finally say something? I mean, I know that you talked about like realizing, but like what was the point where you were like, I need help?
So we came back from our trip from England, and my work became more, I was promoted, because of all the wonderful work I'd been doing. Um, and that obviously added more stress. I had a really tight group of girlfriends, and I started to create conflict with each of them individually.
Mhm.
Um, I remember once I approached a mom because her daughter had been bothering my son,
Mhm.
and really she was stealing his hat. But I was being this overbearing mother, and I approached her and I got so angry at her for what her daughter was doing to my son. And they were in kindergarten at the time. And I remember being very aggressive towards her, and in the back of my head going, what are you doing? You're friends with this.
Mm.
Why are you acting this way? But I kept going because I was now like committed to this person that I was becoming, you
Right.
know? And I literally, there was a group, I think there was 8 of us in total, friends. And by the end of September, they had all cut ties from me for one reason.
Wow. Right. So
I
you
had
were
I had destroyed every friendship that I had.
and you were able to notice this kind of like from the other side, from
I
a
was
different
noticing it from the other side. So that
Mhm.
was in May and June. In July, July 7th, my husband and I decided to separate.
Wow.
He just didn't know who I was anymore. And I honestly wanted nothing to do with him. In my head, he was stopping me from being successful in my career. In my head, he was a weight to
Okay.
me. Right? And
Mhm.
he could do no right. Don't forget, I'm still perfectionist. I still need perfect world. I blamed him for a lot of the fertility issues, and I blamed him because he didn't want to continue to spend money on fertility. We had
Oh,
spent
okay.
We had spent tens of thousands on fertility, and he had said enough. And I blamed him for us not having the family that we wanted. So that was July. August, it was a very difficult month. September, I threw a 40th birthday party for my best friend at the time. Something silly happened at the party, and I got angry at her over it. And that turned into me being overly aggressive. And she literally said, I can't deal with you anymore.
The pain of that must have added that much more.
I had one more conversation with her where I reached out to her and I was trying to apologize. I was trying to explain to her, and she was the only person where I think I actually tried to vocalize what I was going through. And I remember being on my deck, and I was on the floor of the deck, and I was crying, telling her, like, I'm having really bad thoughts. Like, I'm having thoughts that I'm done. And I don't know what to do. And her answer to me was kind of, don't be silly, pull yourself together. You're a great mom. Just get back at it. And I think that's the moment where I realized I am completely alone. I have no friends. I'm separated from my husband. And the beginning of September, I'd been fired from my job.
Shoot.
So I had nothing by the end of September. And by mid-October, I had snowballed to the point where in November, I was admitted into the hospital.
Wow.
So really from May to beginning of November, I went through the last stages of burnout. And the last stages of burnout are depersonalization, conflict, depression. And then there is something that will break you. You know, there's that last moment. And I really think that conversation with my best friend at the time was that breaking point for me, because I just felt utterly alone in the universe. And it was like, okay, I have nothing left. Like, what is the point?
Right. So now you're in the hospital, and I'm going to assume you were there a few days, right? What did you finally, what were the first things that you remember doing to start your recovery? You're already in the hospital. The doctors are talking to you. What are they telling you?
You know, for me, it was, oh, you had a nervous breakdown.
Okay.
That was what they labeled me with, a nervous breakdown, right? You've had a nervous breakdown. You've had a lot of things happen. And I mean, we're here to talk about burnout. That's not my whole life story. You know, there's childhood trauma. There's other things that have gone on in my life that definitely fed into this. But, you know, you got psychologists and psychiatrists and, you know, everything when the ist on the end came to see it, right?
Right.
You know, medicine here and you know, I'll be honest, I've been through the medical system and especially the mental health system my whole life. You know, like I've always suffered from anxiety. I've always suffered from depression. None of the hospital stuff was really that new to me. It was the lack of support after you leave the hospital. You know, picking up the pieces. Let's write her a note so that, you know, she can take the next 6 weeks off and then we'll, you know, reassess. Right. You know, I went to somebody and, you know, they decided that I was borderline personality disorder. And, you know, somebody else might say, oh, you know, she's bipolar. It wasn't until somebody actually sat down with me, it was a female psychologist that went, you're suffering from burnout.
She put it together.
She put the pieces together. And I'm not joking when I say that was probably 3 months after. That was probably end of January when somebody finally said to me what was going on. And then it was a life coach that I hired, my husband and I hired, because my husband and I were still working on our marriage. We were still trying to figure ourselves out, especially when he sees now what was going on with me. Like, this is a psychological illness that I have. Um, it was a life coach who said to me after spending time on my couch, and I would get up in the morning, get my son to school, and then go stay on the couch the whole day. And then my son would come home to school and make sure he was okay, and then I'd go to bed.
Okay.
That was my day for like 6 months. I literally watched every single episode of Law and Order.
Yes,
I have seen every episode.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
It just to know how many episodes of Law and Order are out there.
Right?
Puts it in perspective.
That was my life. And it was a life coach of all the people, because I needed direction. I needed, I think, and I'm not knocking the mental health system, but we spend so much time dealing with the past and dealing with the problems. It makes it very hard to move forward.
Right.
And it was a life coach who said, and I can hear these words. I can hear these words. And listen, I can tell a story 100 times and I still can become emotional. So forgive me. But she said to me, Jenna, when are you going to start living again?
Right.
When are you going to start? I am living. I'm living on my couch. I'm waiting to see if those two detectives get together from Law and Order. I'm living. And she said, no, when are you going to start really living again?
Mm-hmm.
And do you know it took me 2 weeks to answer that question?
Wow. Okay.
Because I didn't have an answer. I didn't know what she meant. At that time, I had no goals, no ambitions, no things that I wanted to do, because I was still living in a fog.
Was there something that in that question over the next couple weeks that finally clicked? There was a flame lit under you, like, voila, this is
my son.
Okay.
My son, through this whole thing, he has been the one thing that has kept me going. I want to be a role model for him. I want to be there for him. I want to, do things with him. But I needed to learn to do it a different way than I had been doing it. Right. I couldn't be this perfectionist mom who, had to have this perfect world anymore, because it didn't exist anymore.
Right.
And I decided I would become a coach. I didn't want to go back to the corporate world. I wanted to help other women. So I started to take courses, and really it empowered me to start healing. And the courses that I took were empowering me to start saying, okay, well, that's a weakness of mine, or that's a strength of mine, or, okay, what is emotional intelligence, or what is time management, or how do I stop saying yes? Because that's the one thing I hate. Oh, I have to learn how to I have to learn how to say no.
Right.
You have to learn how to stop saying yes. Don't, okay, ladies, we add so much to our plates. We don't need anything else. You don't need to learn how to say no. You're basically saying, I need to learn something else, right? No, just stop saying yes.
Right.
It is that simple.
Reflective answering, understanding that you can't take on anymore at this point.
My plate is full. As much as I would love to be a part of that, I cannot commit at this time.
Yeah.
I now those things roll off of my back then, not so much, right? And now it's funny. People say to me, well, how do you do so much? You think I work a full-time job. I have Queen of Burnout. I have Wellness Purse. I'm on multiple committees, pageantry, mom, wife, friend, family member, all of it, right?
Right.
Because I align with things that make me feel fulfilled.
Hey,
and I only choose to bring those things and those people into my life.
Understood. Yes.
Right? There's
Yes.
times where you may say to me, "Hey, Jenna, do you want to jump on this podcast?" And I might sit there and think, "I'd love to, but is this the right time for Jenna?"
Right. Right. Right.
Maybe my answer is, "I love your podcast. I love everything you're doing. Here are some dates I can offer you in October because my September calendar is full." Old Jenna would have been like, "Yeah, when do you need me? We're good.
Learn
I'll add it in."
learn to not say yes. Learn to not say
In a kind and polite way. I think
yes.
women, we think that we're being mean when we say no, right? That no is a bad word, right?
Mhm.
And why do we do that? Because we're constantly telling our kids when they're doing something wrong, no.
Mhm.
So we
Right.
now as women
Associate.
associate it with a bad thing, and it's not a bad thing,
Right. Right. So
right?
I absolutely 100% love the learn not to get rid of learn to say no. You already know how to say yes. Just stop doing it.
Just stop doing it.
Right.
Just
Um,
subtract that. We are so good at adding, but somewhere along the lines, we have forgotten how to subtract from our lives,
right.
right? We
Right.
learned the adding lesson, we learned the multiplying lesson, but we've forgotten how to divide and conquer with our partner, with our, a friend, with whatever. We've learned by divide, I mean delegate, I mean, push things over and get it done together. And we
Right.
have forgotten how to subtract.
Do
If you have,
you
go
go
ahead.
ahead?
Yeah.
I was going to say, with this being, I want to say burnout has been around for an eternity, maybe not as a diagnosis,
Hmm.
or you know what I mean? So, family members, friends, workplaces, different organizations, when they notice these things are going on, or when they notice that something's going on with one, how do they approach that? How does one approach saying, hey, I noticed that something's going on with you without feeling like they're crossing the line? They always say that people just don't want to get involved, but how do we get involved to save not only the career field, but the person's mental health?
I think first of all, you ask them if they do need help,
Hmm.
right? Because sometimes they're not going to ask for the help, but maybe they'll get to a point where they can say, "Yeah, I do need help."
Hmm.
To let them know that you are there, that they're not alone is huge. And I think too, take whether it's an organization or a spouse, don't put anything else on that individual.
Right.
Right? Like my husband sometimes will say to me now, "How are you feeling?" Because yes, I talk about burnout. I'm the queen of burnout. I'm a recovering perfectionist, but there's still times where it can creep up on me.
Hmm.
There's times where I have to have somebody, take the wheel, because if not, who knows where I'm headed, right? It's a part of me. Just like anxiety and depression, it's something that I constantly have to be checking. Um,
Hmm.
and I think that piece of learning to have a voice around it is so important.
Right.
Letting somebody know that if they come to you and say, "I can't do this," that they're not going to get reprimanded, that they're not going to feel unworthy or devalued. That's what somebody needs.
Right.
I wish I could have gone to my employer, or I wish I could have gone to my husband, or I wish I could have gone to my friends. I didn't use my voice. I don't think I, at the time, understood what I was going through to use my
Hmm.
voice. But had I known,
Right.
I hope I would have had the courage and the confidence to say, "I'm not okay."
Understood. When we look at the long-term perspective, in your opinion, how can we shift the conversation from this reactive kind
Mhm.
of situation that we're in to being in the preventative stage? How can we move forward in dealing with the practices of burnout?
I think when I look at workplaces, there's a lot, especially me being in sales, as the sales team always seems to have, we're the ones with the quotas, we're the ones with the high expectations. Without a sales team, a company isn't going to be profitable.
Mm-hmm.
I think every organization needs to have a burnout strategy. There needs to be something in place, some type of policy around burnout with like dedicated, these are the steps, these are the solutions, these are the resources that you're offering employees.
Do you think that the health, the mental health, providing the employees with the mental health number is just kind of the Band-Aid on the
Absolutely.
solution for this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You need to be able to go to your superior, your leader, your manager, whomever, and say, I'm burning out. This is where I'm at. This is my workload. How can you help? Right? Like that's, I love, the fact that we have mental health numbers. I love that insurances offer mental health support, but the employer needs to take some responsibility for this as well. Right? It
Right.
cannot all be put on the employee, because when I was going through burnout, I didn't know I was going through burnout. So how was I to know to call the number?
Right. Right. And you think that I see so many, it seems like everybody's talking about the customer service problem. Customer
Mhm.
service is so bad. Well, customer service is bad, says the organization, because they don't have enough employees. And these employees are covering, I mean, it seems like in almost every industry that is what we're running into. And so I think that I appreciate everything that you do in your initiatives and your platforms to bring awareness to this, because again, even until we met and I started researching your platform, that's not something I ever put together. I was, hey, really? Like,
Mhm.
this is where I was at in all of this. And so I applaud you for all that you do. And I hope that we can continue to have these discussions about burnout.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I mean, at the end of the day, like I said at the beginning, I never saw that this is where my journey would take me. I didn't go out to be a high achiever, to suffer from burnout.
Mhm.
But, now that I've been able to walk through this storm, the people that I've met, the experiences that I've had, the woman that I have become, you know, it's been worth it. I am a stronger person. I am more confident. I am more capable. I am more resilient than I was before burnout, So I want people to know that if they are suffering from burnout, there are many resources and solutions, and people are talking about it, and you are not alone on this journey. And that if I can offer one piece of advice, it's to do one small thing every day for yourself. Whether it's read a page of a book, 5 minutes of meditation, a 10-minute walk, watch a TV show, whatever it is that brings you joy and fulfillment for those 5 or 10 minutes. I'm not asking for an hour, 5 or 10 minutes. Start there and do that daily, and you will build momentum.
So those that want to follow you,
Mm-hmm.
how do they follow you? What's a website that they can use? And I'm going to type this in a banner so that they
So
can.
my website is my first and last name, Jenna Rachiele, JennaRachiele.com.
Ooh, I've been jacking it up, Rachiele.
Okay. Listen, I'm married to an Italian, so the CH is like a K.
Okay.
And
Jenna
then
Rachiele at what?
JennaRachiele.com. Most of my stuff is posted on Instagram and Facebook, though. So it's at the Queen of Burnout, both on Facebook and on Instagram, as well as LinkedIn.
Okay. There's too many E's in there. On Facebook, IG, and LinkedIn.
Yeah, I am everywhere.
I'm just making sure that they can see this for a second.
Problem.
I suck at typing and doing this all at the same time. So
That's okay. And you know what? While you're doing that, I'll say one more thing. So you talked earlier about the idea of balance, right? Like that your leader was talking to you about finding balance in your life. The one thing I'll suggest is remove the idea of balance.
okay.
Think of life like a pendulum. Okay. We're not going to think of life like scales because you'll never fully get that balance. If you're working on work, it's going to come down and family is going to go up, right? Because you're never going to fully be able to find the balance. But if you look at a pendulum, right? And that's how I look at my life. It's swinging back and forth, right?
Right.
And I know if I'm over here and I focus over here for a little while, I can get it to swing back.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't want it swinging around like a clock because that
Right.
but I like movement in my life. I like to feel like I have momentum. The
Right.
one thing I don't want is I don't want it just stuck hanging there because that's your comfort zone. You
Mm-hmm.
want movement. You want to enjoy things. Life is a journey. So take away this idea of you need to find balance in life and enjoy the life's pendulum.
A pendulum may not break, it's going to continue to swing, where a scale can be tipped and broken.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
And the tiniest movement can get it going. You don't need a lot of force. You just need to do something every day for yourself.
So, do you have any final words of advice from anyone? So, we're now shifting from the thought process of being on a balancing scale to viewing life as a pendulum.
Yeah.
What other final words do you have for somebody that's feeling overwhelmed and just not understanding what next steps they should take or what they should communicate?
3 things I would say to that person is 1, first of all, you're not alone. Don't be afraid to speak out. You know, whether it's a friend, a family member, a colleague, a health line, you know, use your voice. You know, if you're feeling that way, you need to seek help because burnout is a very, very scary road to go down.
Right.
And healing is hard. Okay, healing takes time, but staying in burnout is even harder. And the last thing I would say is listen to yourself, listen to your intuition, listen to your gut. I ignored that for so long, but you truly know when something feels right or wrong, and you have to listen to that. And you have to give that the opportunity to help point you in the right direction of where life is taking you.
Thank you, Jenna. I truly, truly appreciate the wealth of knowledge and the expertise that you shared. Thank you for sharing your personal story. It really touched my heart, and I know that it touched the hearts of many of the viewers that watched today on Facebook, LinkedIn, IG. And I, am going to pray that on you as you continue your journey, that success meets your hands at every reach. I understand that not only are you the queen of burnout, but you are also a pageant queen. Are you in next steps? Are we ready to talk about what's next before we go?
There's a contract coming. It's almost completed. I am going to be representing Canada at a new pageant system. I'm very excited about it because it offers actually a virtual pageant for people with disabilities that maybe cannot get to an in-person. So I love the inclusivity. I love the diversity of it. And you must have a platform to be a part of this system. And I was the queen of burnout before I found pageantry. Pageantry found me after naming myself queen of burnout, believe it or not. I've always felt like I had an invisible crown. I now have tangible crowns.
Right.
So yeah, I am really excited about this new opportunity. So in the next week, I will be announcing it. I'm waiting for them to make the announcement. Everything was finalized today, but I will give them the opportunity to make the announcement first. But if you follow me, Queen of Burnout on Instagram and Facebook, as soon as I can, I will let everyone know what the system is. And you know what? Hopefully, I'll see some smiley faces on the stage with me.
Good deal. Thank you, Jenna. We appreciate you being here, and thank you for your time. Again, your expertise and your story. It takes courage to go out and share your story with the world. But keep healing and keep healing others, serving to heal.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity, for giving me the opportunity to come and speak about burnout, for everything that you do and your platform. And, you know, all the love that you give me, I give right back to you. I think you're phenomenal, and I can't wait to see how you shine as well in this life.
Thank you. I truly appreciate you. Until next time, beautiful.
All right.
Well, friends, what an amazing episode. Who would have ever thought that we would have learned so much about burnout? Burnout is a real thing, as we learned from Jenna today. And this is not, as she would say, this is not something that you can go take a walk and just drink or soak in a bath about. This is a real time situation. So when you're feeling overwhelmed, as Jenna said, remember to view your life not so much as a scale and balancing, but as a pendulum, trying not to stay stagnant, but moving with the flow of life. And just know that you are worth it. As Jenna told us earlier today, I will repeat several more of her quote. I will quote her several more times. As she said, it's not about learning to say no as much as it is to stop saying yes. We are who we are. We are all are uniquely and wonderfully made with our own individual mission and purpose in life. Don't be burnt out. Let's listen to some of the tips and tricks that Jenna talked to us about today, and let's extinguish that fire and conquer burnout. Make sure that you are communicating with those that are closest to you, whether it's your spouse, your child, your supervisor. Communicate your needs, communicate your wants, and let's prevent burnout before it starts. Let's get ahead of the game. Thank you for joining us on Beyond the Battle, Pain, Pageants, and Perspective, where we aim to bring you uplifting stories that will remind you that you are not alone in your daily struggles. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next Monday on the next episode of Beyond the Battle BTB.